Hello everyone, this is Direwolf20 and welcome to part 2 of my Botania mod Spotlight. Lots of stuff to cover today. What I'd like to get done, and we'll see how far I get, is taking a look at the Runic altar, another crafting mechanic, which is pretty neat and interesting from Botania. Then we're going to look at a couple of the functional flowers, a couple of the ones that are really cool to use, and some of the toys and gadgets you get. And then we'll see where that gets us. So, I think the first thing that we'll start off with is probably the Runic altar. So the Runic altar is easy to make. It's just some living rock and either a mana pearl or mana diamond, your choice on what you want to use. Go ahead and read the instructions in the book, or watch the next segment of the video. This is a 23-page chapter, and it's not that big a deal though, because many of the pages are the recipes for all the runes that you can make. There are quite a few runes in this mod, and they are broken down into 3 tiers. There's the first tier of runes, which are water, earth, fire, and air. These require typically mana steel and mana powder, and then 3 other items. You'll notice that all of 4 of these require mana steel, mana powder, and 3 different items that make up the rune. The next tier requires 2 of the previous tier, and there's 4 of them. There's the rune of spring, summer, winter, and fall. And again, those require 2 of the previous tier, plus usually around 4 different item types that we're going to be in combination of those. And then finally, the last tier, there's one separate, it's the rune of mana. It's 5 mana steel ingots and a mana pearl. And then the last tier requires one of the first tier and one of the second tier, and usually a couple mana diamonds. So all these runes are made in different ways. Pretty much, here's how it works, right? Let's take the rune of fire, for example. The rune of fire, and we can look up in JEI, requires mana steel ingot and mana powder. We haven't seen mana powder yet, but we can take a look at it, and we can see that it's basically just dropped into a mana pool. It's gunpowder or redstone, I think. Yeah, redstone, glowstone, sugar, some of the floral powder. There's lots of different ways to make mana powder, but long story short, you just drop something along these lines into the mana pool, and you get your mana powder. To place items on the Runic altar, you've got 2 options. You can either drop it with Q, or you can right-click the item on the altar. Either way, they'll start floating around the altar, and you'll know you've got the right thing. If you accidentally put something on there that you didn't mean to, like a diamond sword, shift right-click to get the last item back with an empty hand. You'll notice that once you place all 5 items on there, all of a sudden it'll indicate that it's got the proper rune creation. Now the next thing we need to do is feed this thing with mana. In order to do that, we're going to want a mana spreader. Similar to the way that we transferred mana from one pool to the next, we're going to want to transfer mana from one pool directly into the altar. You could feed mana directly from the mana spreader that's generating mana, but that'll be much slower. My recommendation is obviously to place it on the pool and have it face right in there. Nice. Now you can see that the little progress bar is going. So anytime you've got the Wand of the Forest in your hand, you can look at this, or even without the Wand of the Forest, and you can see the progress bar going. Once the progress bar is complete, what it tells you is you need to drop some living rock on there and hit it with the Wand of the Forest. So once this is complete, all you need to do is drop a piece of living rock and right-click with the Wand of the Forest. And those items will be converted into the appropriate rune. This is the same process for every rune in the game. So all runes are made the same way. You place the ingredients on the altar. Once the appropriate amount of mana has been fed into the runic altar, you drop a piece of living rock on there and right-click with a Wand of the Forest. Runes are used for a lot of crafting recipes, some of them being some baubles, some of them being some tools and wands, and other things like crafting Terrasteel, which we'll see in a little bit. Something else you guys should know is you can right-click instead of dropping the living rock, just like you can with the items. And then after you craft, you are able to right-click with an empty hand, and it'll automatically replace all the ingredients. Similar to the way this worked with the Petal Apothecary. I think you have about 20 seconds or so it's not, 10 minutes later you can do this, but, within 10 seconds, if you want to craft multiple sets of fire runes, it's easy to do. So now that we've checked out a few of the ways to craft, there's even one more, or 2 more actually, technically, to be able to craft, but we'll get to those later. We've seen a bunch of ways to make a bunch of cool stuff, but we haven't seen too much of the cool stuff you can make. So let's spend a little time reviewing some of the cool flowers and some of the cool items that you can make in this earlier tier of the game. You're going to have to progress further into Botania to get access to some of the even cooler items, but for now, let's take a look at some cool stuff we can see. So there's quite a few nifty gadgets and items that I want to show you guys right now before we jump into some of the more progressive sections of this mod. Some of these are going to require a nearby mana pool. And you'll notice that if you place down a functional flower, the first one I'm going to demonstrate is the Agricarnation, it's going to probably absorb mana from a mana pool. And you can see the one in the distance that it's connected to. Anytime you mouse over anything in Botania, if it does or has the ability to link to a mana pool, it's going to automatically show it. So notice how this guy, when we mouse over the spreader, it kind of highlights the mana pool here, and the same for this spreader, and the same is happening with this guy. Nice. It even works with the flowers to show you which mana spreader the flowers are linked to. Pretty cool. So this Agricarnation is currently getting mana, and as a result, it's helping to speed up the growth of nearby crops. Nice. You can see the little particle effects indicating that it's working. What's the area of effect that it works on? Tricky to tell, unless you give yourself one of the other items I want to show you, which is the Mana Seer monocle. It goes into one of your Bauble slots, and basically what it does is it shows when you mouse over any flower, the area of effect the flower is covering. Nice. So you can see what the range is on this flower just by mousing over it. And that pretty much works for most of the flowers. So you can see the collection range of the Endoflame, how far away it'll pick up items, and other stuff like that. Another nifty functional flower is the Bellthorn, which has a decent area of effect. First, make sure it's connected to a mana pool. If it's not, make sure there's one nearby, and make sure to link it. Nice. The Bellthorn is a pretty nifty flower. It automatically damages nearby mobs. Sweet, as long as they happen to wander into its area of effect, and it does, of course, use mana to do that. Similar to the Bellthorn, you have the Dreadthorn. What this does is pretty much kill all adult animals nearby. So, if you've got adult cows nearby, it'll automatically kill them for you. Nice. If you've got a baby one nearby, it will not. And for all those animal drops you might get, you can use the Hopper Hawk. What it'll do will be to automatically collect nearby items and drop them in an adjacent chest. Pretty cool. Do note that it, I think, let's see if unless it changed, should still work even if you don't give it any mana, but giving it mana will increase its range. So right now it's got a pretty large range with the mana pool nearby, but if it did not have a mana pool nearby, it would have a smaller range. And we'll see that over here. Also with the Hopper Hawk, putting an item frame on any of the adjacent inventories will specify which items can or can't go into them. So pretty much follow the instructions here to specify how to sort items into the appropriate inventories if you want to specify which items can be picked up and which inventories they go into. We've also got a nifty little flower called the Clayconia. What this does is automatically converts sand nearby into a single piece of clay. So not a block of clay, but a single piece. Pretty nice. Of course, it uses a little bit of mana, not too much, but in the book it says decent amount. There's a ton of functional flowers even at this phase of Botania, and there's more later on. We're not going to cover all of them now. What I'm probably going to switch over to, however, is some of the nifty items you can get. So I want to show you a few more baubles. We've already checked out the Mana Seer monocle. Let's take a look at the Ring of Magnetization. This is a nice one. Any items that are on the ground nearby, it basically works as a magnet. We've seen magnet functionality in the past. When you drop items, it automatically turns off for a few seconds and then turns itself back on. This kind of prevents you from dropping items and have them automatically get sucked up into your inventory. So as you can see, dropping items on the ground, it automatically turned it off. That's why it's gray. And then it'll turn itself back on after a few seconds and the items will magnet up to you. Awesome. There's also a flower, by the way, that prevents the magnet from working in an area of effect, and that is called the Solagnolia. This is a pretty cool one. Basically, you might want to put this, for example, over here next to your Endoflame, and what it does is it prevents in a small area of effect that you can see here the magnet from working at all. So if you, for example, had an automated coal farm going on here, and coal was being dropped on the ground regularly, you wouldn't want that to be magneted back up into your inventory. So make sure the Solagnolia is nearby, and your magnet will be forever disabled. Nice. Forever as in as long as you stand within that area. When you get out of the area, the magnet turns back on. One of my personal favorites, the Sojourner's Sash. It lets you run a little bit faster and jump higher. Nice. Again, using up mana. Pretty much all the baubles that require mana are going to draw it from a tablet in your inventory. So make sure to get yourself a tablet with some mana in it. I've got a creative one right now, which I cheated in, obviously. But the Sojourner's Stash, definitely a nice early game way to get a nice speed boost, nice jump boost, and uphill step assist. So you can automatically step up blocks without having to jump. Super cool. You can hold shift to disable the uphill step assist. Very cool. Do note that it's pretty easy to make. Just a little bit of leather, a rune of air, a rune of earth, and a mana steel ingot. Getting burned is never fun. You're on fire for a long time afterwards. Go ahead and throw on a pyroclast pendant and it'll automatically remove fire effects. This does not protect you directly against lava, but it will extinguish you immediately when you get out of it. Super useful if you jump into the nether and you happen to run through fire frequently in there. It's a very, very useful nether device. There is an upgraded version of this pendant that we don't have access to at the moment that will allow you to completely be immune to all forms of fire and lava and all that good stuff. There's also some nifty magical staffs, several of them in fact. One of the first couple that I'll show you are some nifty ones. The Rod of the Depths, for example. Right click to place cobblestone. That's all it does, but it's pretty neat. And it's very powerful because it can place cobblestone pretty much endlessly, provided that you have enough mana in your inventory to create it. Similarly, you've got the Rod of the Lands. Does the same thing with dirt. Nice. And then finally, we've got the Rod of the Seas. Pretty cool, makes a water source block wherever you right click, but even more importantly, this can be used to automate your petal apothecary, because all you have to do is right click the petal apothecary with it and boom, it'll automatically fill up with water. So placing this in some kind of autonomous activator or even a dispenser will automatically fill up the petal apothecary every time you use it. Combine a couple features of the petal apothecary, like its ability to check if it's ready for flowers and all that stuff with comparators, and you might be able to automate this with a dispenser and a Rod of the Seas. Nice. The Rod of the Skies helps you fly a little bit. It's not going to pretty much send you flying forever. You'll notice that it has a little bit of a damage bar. When you right click it, it fills you up, and you can kind of catch yourself as you fall too. But a nice way to get up some vertical height. The Rod of the Molten Core will automatically smelt blocks in the world for you. So sand turns into glass, cobblestone turns into stone, etc., etc. Note that it doesn't work on things like wood, which would turn the block into an item entity. It only works on blocks that turn into other blocks. The Rod of Shifting Crust is definitely a cool one. You can shift right click on a block to specify what type of stone or what type of item to use, and you can basically use it as an exchanger. It exchanges blocks in an area of effect. Nice. Left click to do one and right click to do multiples. Awesome. Obviously, as you can see, we missed one because we ran out of stone in our inventory. Not too bad. Do note, by the way, that if you want to swap things like cobblestone or dirt, it can draw from the Rod of the Depths or the Rod of the Lands if you wish. So even though we don't have any cobblestone in our inventory at the moment, going ahead and setting this to cobblestone, we can shift it and it'll draw from the Rod of the Depths. Awesome. Same for dirt. So, provided that we have some dirt available here that we want to target, you can see we have an infinite amount of it because we've got the Rod of the Depths and the Rod of the Lands here. Nice. Having a ring of magnetization is probably recommended if you're going to have a bunch of items lying around like that. The next one I want to show you, which is pretty cool, is the Rod of the Hells. This is a neat weapon. Basically, it'll burn anything in a large area of effect wherever you right-click. So find some creatures nearby to use as test subjects and right-click. This includes the caster, by the way. So anything inside the area of effect circle here will be lit on fire. Probably a good idea to have that pyroclast pendant handy. Nice. Notice that it has a little bit of a cooldown on it, indicated by the moving white texture that's overlapping it. So once this is used, you have to give it a little time before you can use it again. So now that we've seen a bunch of cool items we can use and you've started playing with them and decided, hey, I really like all this stuff, you've probably gotten to the point where you're running really low on mana. Oh my. You're going to want to generate some more. And there's a lot of options to generate mana now that we've unlocked runic altars and have the ability to create runes. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of the flowers that can generate mana right now. One of the first ones I want to show you is the Gormalaeus. Nice. This thing is cool because basically the way it works is when you drop a piece of food on it, it's going to go ahead and eat it up. Nice. So it will probably send mana directly to the mana spreader. There you go. And you can see the food was ingested and eaten. However, there's a trick to this flower. If you drop another piece of food on there, it will probably eat it. Yeah, there we go. After it runs out. But if you keep dropping food on there, it'll continuously eat it and not generate mana from all the extra food that you put on there. See? Not working out too well for us. So basically what you're going to find is if you continuously throw food at it, it's going to waste a lot of the food. There's no automatic stopping mechanism. So you need a way to detect when you need to drop food on it again. Pretty important little trick. A good way to do that is probably with a mana detector. What this block does is when a mana pulse is shooting through it, it will automatically emit a redstone signal. Cool. So you can use this to kind of detect when the flower is still running, and when the flower is no longer running, the redstone signal stops pulsing. This is useful for several things in Botania for automation purposes, and it's definitely neat to do. So highly recommend checking that out. Basically, when a mana pulse goes through the mana detector, it emits a redstone signal. Do note that the mana detector is one of the few blocks that mana pulses can go through. So notice this mana spreader is full at the moment and it's no longer sending pulses because it cannot shoot through solid blocks. You have to remove that solid block to let the pulse go through. There is a lens, by the way, which we haven't seen yet, that allows you to circumvent that. The Munchdew is another very good flower for mana generation. Basically what it does is it will automatically consume any nearby leaves and convert them directly into mana. Nice. Not a bad amount either. There's two catches to this flower. Number one, any leaves that it munches will not drop saplings. So you will not get saplings out of this. So make sure you have another form of sapling generation. Number two, after the creation of the mana is complete and it runs out of leaves to eat, it has a cooldown timer that starts and it won't eat another set of leaves for about a minute. Another personal favorite of mine is the entropinium. This one's just fun to automate because it's dangerous. Basically what happens is, inside of its area of effect, if any TNT explodes, like so, it'll absorb the force of that explosion and convert it directly into mana. Nice. And a decent amount of mana at that. The catch, however, is if there's any mana inside the entropinium, it will not absorb the explosion. What this means is that the explosion will damage nearby blocks as usual. So, make sure that this entropinium is empty before you set off another explosion. Definitely worth automating. At some point in your magical career, you're going to want to get to making Terrasteel. This is some very powerful stuff that comes at pretty hefty cost. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have a full mana pool here to demonstrate this. While that mana pool is filling up with mana, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make the Terrasteel items. You're going to need a multi-block structure, including a Terrasteel agglomeration plate. Basically, to make this up, you're going to need 5 pieces of living rock and 4 pieces of lapis blocks. Okay, so we'll get our lapis blocks here, and we'll get our living rock. If you want, you can visualize this in the world by clicking the button. Nice, and you'll see what the structure needs to look like. Very cool. If you want, instead of just looking around at where it might go, you can right-click on any block in the world, and it'll anchor that visualization there, and you can kind of see what it needs to be. This works for a lot of the multi-blocks in Botania, and is definitely useful when you're building large and complex structures. Super cool. Once you've got your multi-block formed, you should be in good shape. Nice. Structure complete. It'll tell you right there. And it'll automatically unvisualize it. If you have placed it in the world and you want to unvisualize it, just click the unvisualize button and it'll be gone. Very cool. So how do we make Terrasteel with this? Well, we're going to need to feed this thing a whole bunch of mana, in addition to a mana pearl, a mana steel ingot, and a mana diamond. That's pretty much all there is to it. The trick is getting the amount of mana in there. There's a ton that it needs. Right now, we've got a full mana pool to demonstrate this. I think you can feed it with a mana spreader. It would just take a really long time. The best way to go about doing it is crafting yourself some sparks. They're really easy to make. Place a spark on a mana pool, like so, and then place one on top of the terrestrial agglomeration plate, and you'll see the sparks floating above. Sparks have other purposes that we'll see a little bit later on in the spotlight, but for now, this is a good way to feed your terrestrial agglomeration plate with a bunch of mana from different pools. You can have multiple sparks on multiple pools, and it'll all feed into the agglomeration plate together, but for now, we're just going to use one. Now, just get your mana diamonds. So, mana diamond, mana pearl, and mana steel ingot. Should be pretty easy. Let's give it a try. Drop these 3 items right onto the terrestrial agglomeration plate and stand back. And you'll notice that mana is flying from the mana pool into the terrestrial agglomeration plate. Nice. After a few seconds and a large amount of mana being used up, it'll automatically convert those 3 items into your Terrasteel for you. Let's give it a shot. By the way, you'll notice that we've already used half the mana pool's mana. It uses about half a mana pool to run. So you'll notice that you're pretty much done when you've got close to that halfway point. Very cool. And we've got our first piece of Terrasteel. Nice. You can break these down into nuggets, by the way, and blocks. Terrasteel is used for a lot of things. You get a bunch of different nifty upgrades to different rods, a bunch of different items that you can make. It's basically used for a lot. It's also got its own armor set, so there's a whole set of armor and tools that you can use with Terrasteel. Super nice. We'll take a look at a few of these now. First off, the Terrasteel armor set, which looks super cool. Just like the Mana Steel armor set, it can use mana from your inventory to repair itself. So that's pretty nice. It has the armor protection of diamond, and it's enchantable. So super cool stuff. You'll also notice when holding shift here that if you have all 4 sets, 20% less mana cost on mana tools and rods, regen even if hunger isn't topped off, and passive mana generation on mana tablets. So once you've got the full set of Terrasteel, you've got a pretty decent set of armor. Do note, however, you need a decent amount of Terrasteel, about 3 Terrasteel per armor piece. So in total, you need a dozen Terrasteel ingots to pull off this armor set, in addition to the Mana Steel, some runes, and some living wood stuff. So pretty expensive armor set, but totally worth getting. Highly recommend it. The Terrasteel axe, the Terra truncator, will automatically clear off both wood and saplings and leaves and all that good stuff once you chop down a tree. Nice. And then finally, we've got the Terra Blade, which, yes, is taken from Terraria. When you left-click, it'll shoot a pulse of energy. Not all the time. I think it's like a random chance that happens. And it'll do a decent amount of damage. About as much as a normal sword hit. Nice. Maybe it is every time. Awesome. Yeah, pretty powerful sword. Pretty much about the same amount of damage as a diamond sword. And, of course, enchantable as well. The next item I want to show you are mana pylons. These are pretty nifty devices. Place them near an enchanting table, and they'll automatically boost the enchantment levels for you. You can get all the way up to level 30 by having simply 2 mana pylons nearby. Plus, they look awesome. These mana pylons can be used for a few other things as well. You're going to use them in the next segment, which is getting yourself the portal to Alfheim. The portal to Alfheim is going to require quite a few things. Mostly it requires Terrasteel nuggets to get yourself some Elven Gateway cores. You're going to need 1 of them, according to the book. You're also going to need 3 Glimmering Living Wood and 8 Living Wood blocks. You'll also need 2 mana pools and 2 Natura pylons. Natura pylons are made from Terrasteel nuggets as well. So in total, it looks like you're going to need about 1 Terrasteel to open up this portal. 3 nuggets for the Gateway core, and 3 nuggets each for the 2 Natura pylons is a total of 9 nuggets. So pretty nice. So the way this works basically is as follows. First, we need to build the portal to Alfheim, which will anchor right about here. So to make it, simply place your Elven Gateway core in the center, and then you're going to need some living wood on the sides. In the middle of each side, you're going to need some glimmering living wood, and then you're going to build up like so. Nice. And now you've got a completed structure. You need to place 2 mana pools within 11 by 11 blocks of the Elven Gateway core, so make sure that they're relatively nearby. And you're going to need to place some Natura pylons directly on top of it. Then all you need to do is right-click on the Elven Gateway core, and you will activate the portal. Nice. That is super cool. And you can see nifty particle effects flying into it and all kinds of good stuff. So however you want to create this and activate it is up to you. It is going to require mana. Right now I'm obviously using infinite pools, so you're not going to see that mana cost. It requires mana to open the portal, and then it stops using mana. But every time you craft something with this portal, you will use up a little bit of mana. So you're going to want to keep these pools filled so that you can continuously craft with it. How do we craft things? It's pretty easy. Throw items into the portal. Boom. And then it'll spit out the appropriate item. When you get this back, your book for example, you get access to a bunch more items. So as you flip through your book here, you'll see that anything in green is Elven. Nice. So you've basically unlocked the second tier of Botania by doing this. And there's a bunch of different flowers, a bunch of functional and production flowers, a bunch more items, a bunch more tools and gadgets and baubles and all kinds of stuff. Basically, we've unlocked the whole second half of Botania. Other crafting recipes for this are as follows. In the resources of Alfheim section, we'll see that for 1 living wood, we'll get back 1 dream wood, which can be used for some pretty cool stuff. For 2 mana steel, we will get elementium ingots. So 2 steel, 2 items per 1 there. And then we can get mana pearls turned into pixie dust and mana diamonds turned into dragonstone. Cool. There's also a couple other things you can get in here as well, which I definitely recommend you checking out. Basically, any items that you drop in there that don't belong will be consumed and not given back. So, see you later, cobblestone. You're not coming back to me. However, if you do have your mana steel ingots, for example, 2 of those will fly in and it'll spit back out an elementium ingot. So don't drop anything in there that you don't want to lose or that doesn't belong, right? So living wood gives you the dream wood. Nice. And you can drop a bunch in there and it'll spit a bunch out. Elementium can also be used to make armor and tools. Basically, the armor gives you that little boost for mana usage on tools and rods, but it also has a chance to spawn pixies to automatically help you protect yourself in battle. So basically these pixies will attack nearby creatures attacking you when you're wearing the armor set, and you can also get potion effects from some of them randomly when you've got the full set going on. Pretty cool. Each tool has different abilities. So for example, the elementium pickaxe will automatically destroy any cobblestone and mundane materials and only collect ores. So if you go mining and you don't want to get cobblestone from that mining, use the elementium pickaxe. The elementium shovel is pretty cool. Is basically when you have sand or gravel or any other blocks that are affected by gravity, when you harvest the bottom one, it'll automatically harvest all of them above it so that it doesn't fall and have that falling block effect. Neat. The elementium axe increases your chance of decapitating your enemies, so it'll cause the player head or creeper heads or zombie heads or whatever else to drop when you kill them with that thing. The elementium sword will increase the chance of spawning pixies when you're attacking enemies, especially if you're wearing the armor set. And then finally, you've got the elementium shears, which you can hold right-click and it will harvest sheep in an area of effect. Neat. One of the items we didn't talk about yet is the Terra shatterer. I saved this until after this segment because it works with elementium tools a little bit too. The Terra shatterer is a device that can be upgraded many times using large amounts of mana, and I mean really large amounts of mana, to get up to different levels. So basically, it functions very much like a mana tablet. It can amass mana, it says it right there. And each time you upgrade, it'll go up to a different rank. So it starts at D and then goes up to C, B, A, S, and SS. And you can see these all in JEI. So if you want to give yourself the appropriate versions through cheating, that's on you. So the Terra Shatterer rank D works as pretty much a standard pickaxe. It doesn't have any special abilities and doesn't do anything cool. Terra Shatterer rank C, you can right-click to activate, and when you do, it'll see that it changes texture. While it's activated, it's going to drain mana out of any mana inventory items. So for example, let's get a non-cheating mana tablet so you can see how much this uses. So a regular mana tablet that can be drained, you'll notice that it slowly is draining it. And every time you mine, it'll break in a 3-tall column. Nice. I like that. Pretty fancy. Works on gravel and whatnot too. That's the C rank. The next one is rank B. 3x3 area of effect. Nice. And again, this is using mana from your tablet. Cool. Rank A gets even larger area of effect once it's activated. Sweet. And then rank S, things start to get crazy. And then finally rank SS. Whoa! So, large amounts of mining, obviously. A magnet ring is highly recommended once you've got this rank. However, it should be noted that it takes a ridiculous amount of mana to get up to the rank SS Terra Shatterer. Like, really ridiculous. Each rank is going to require more and more mana, so to get from rank D to rank C isn't too bad. Assuming that your pool is configured to put mana into items. Make sure not to forget that part. Neat. So we'll drain, a decent amount of mana into there, and we'll see the progress. We already got this up to rank C, and it's working its way to rank B. So D to C, real easy. C to B, pretty easy. But beyond that, it gets really ridiculous. So this guy's maybe a third or maybe a quarter of the way to B. So it's probably going to require, it looks like, almost a full pool to get to B, and then it gets much, much larger from there. So keep in mind that getting up to the top tier rank of SS is going to require huge amounts of mana. Remember I said you can do something with the elementium tools? Combine a Terra shatterer with an elementium pickaxe, and it takes on the attributes of that Terra shatterer, meaning that when you go mine huge amounts of resources, it'll only give you the ores, and it'll automatically void anything that is not an ore. Nice. Sweet. One of the other nifty things we can craft now are spark augments. These are really useful, and I'm going to show you why. So sparks can be used to automatically transmit mana from one pool to another if you use spark augments, and they're pretty cool. One of the ones that you can get yourself is the dominant spark augment. What this does is it will automatically draw mana from any nearby pool that has a spark on it. So let's demonstrate with 2 mana pools, each of which will have a spark. And if we place the dominant spark on this one, it will automatically draw from all nearby pools. Nice. You can remove this by shift right clicking with the Wand of the Forest. The recessive spark is a little bit more useful in my opinion. It will allow it to distribute mana from the pool it's on to all nearby pools with a spark on it. So by simply placing that on there, it'll automatically distribute from here to any nearby pools that aren't already full. Sweet. So if we had another pool there with another spark on it, it would start distributing to that one as well. Very cool. So if you have a mana generation system that feeds into a pool, and then you want to have a bunch of mana pools as backup batteries or storage of extra mana, definitely a good approach to take. If this system is running and you don't want one of the pools to be effective, affected by it, just throw an isolated one on there, and it basically blocks this functionality. This does the same thing for dominant. So if you're drawing mana from a pool and you don't want that pool to be emptied, throw the isolated one on there, and it stops it from sending mana that way. Once that's removed, mana can be sent to it or drawn from it again. Nice. And then another cool one is the dispersive spark. What this does is it'll automatically fill up your mana tablets or any other mana using items in your inventory with the mana from the pool that it's on. So simply get yourself an empty mana tablet to see this in effect, and you'll see it sending mana directly to you. Super cool. And with that, guys, I think we've hit a good wrapping up point for part 2 of the Botania Mod Spotlight. We've got a lot more stuff to cover, so it'll definitely be a part 3, maybe even a part 4. We'll see. But there's a lot more things to see. So next episode, we'll come back. We'll probably take a look at things like a couple more nifty gadgets, some rods I want to show you, some more baubles, some other cool things that we get by unlocking the Elven Portal. Then we're probably going to take a look at the Ritual of Gaia, which allows you to fight a crazy boss fight. That's really hard to do, by the way. But the rewards for it are pretty awesome, so we're definitely going to want to check that out. And then some other nifty stuff to check out as well. We've got a lot more things to see. For now, Darryl20 signing off. Hope you guys enjoyed part 2 of the Botania Mod Spotlight. As always, take it easy.